Speedy-D and Trac 2. Some legendary Bronx B-boys.
Oh, no, please do me a favor. Legendary is somebody who passed away. Pioneers.
You're absolutely right. Pioneers.
Yes.
And we were going to, discuss some variables about their, their background and everything. Yeah, we're going to, proceed from there. So, starting with you, Trac. So, for context,
yeah.
People already know the variables of your backgrounds and the shared history that you guys have. So we're not even going to go with that. We're going to proceed to some other context things. That some things that people may not know and all of those things. So we're going to ask some questions about your crew, Style Child of Rock. As you've stated, in the past, that Style Child of Rock was a democracy. There was no one like president of the crew.
Yeah.
Which, you guys were like the first guys, to do like
no press.
Not president. Yes. How did that translate? When it came time, for you guys to agree on things and all that stuff. It was like, a vote that had to be unanimous, or is it majority rules?
No, it's unanimous. It has to be unanimous. And then whoever disagrees, then they have the right to just speak on why. But then during the conversation, they understood the bigger picture of why. Said, yeah, now I get it.
Yeah.
So you got one person that's kind of stubborn and want to change something, but then when we speak about it and understanding what you're a part of, they go, yeah, it's not about me, it's about us now. And that's when it changes. Now everybody's focused on the bigger picture. And that's what it's all about. It was all about that. If it wasn't unanimous, it doesn't pass. We can't do it. But when you speak, and because certain people have their own point of view, maybe they want to put out. But then that's selfish. Because we're a crew. So the idea of somebody saying something that's selfish, but then when we break it down as what it really is, there's no one person is bigger than the crew.
So you move as a union.
And there you go. And then that name in one of our abandoned buildings.
I just want to say real quick.
Go ahead.
It also applies to being a member of a group and something is being offered to one individual. Mm-hmm. The rule of the game is if we can't go, if my crew can't go or be in a video or something, nobody goes.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
No one is bigger.
Yeah. No one's bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, stay on, some variables about the history of the crew. Could you state, the members that were in Star Child?
Well, in Star Child of Rock, everything stems from the blackout. It stems from the blackout.
No, but
the members of the crew.
Oh, the members.
Yeah, yes, the
all
members,
right.
yeah.
My teachers were Boz, right? Blue Eyes, Peabody 170, me, and there's one more. Peabody 170, me, Peabody. There's one more. Who the fuck is it? Mango Rock. And then Mango Rock.
So
the greatest. He's the Kenny of our generation.
So when they say, Mongo was a guy who was one of the first guys who mastered like combinations.
Yes, he is the king of combination. So
and what kind of combinations would that be?
It's hard to tell. You understand, or describe it, because the moment is self-explanatory.
So he just had so much variation.
Yes.
Like he could pull out whatever. So you're so spontaneous.
Yes. So when we say king in combination, when you take one move and then, you add another move, and then you add another move, to create one.
He was constantly in
He
creation.
was the master of it. JoJo created the first backspin. He created the second backspin. But his backspin, you could just get out of it. You know, some backspin you gotta wait for it to stop in order for you to get up and do it again. But his backspin allowed him to go from the backspin back into his footwork.
So he could use it as a transition.
Exactly. Exactly. And at that time, it didn't exist. He transcended. You know what I'm saying? He made something that you could just continue to do more.
He's part of the piece of the puzzle that extended, what came into, the 80s and all of that stuff. I can dig that. So we're going to go.
So would you say that his backspin was the one that kind of like elevated to
The windmill.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was
See the
more-
difference with JoJo's backspin? He would do a half a backspin and then his butt be up. He would do a backspin and then let his butt be up. He didn't do that. He made sure it wasn't under. He would start from the shoulder, but everything was in the middle.
So like in the so because I've seen quite a few people like I can't think of the names, but pretty much. So you got some people that find their point in the mid part of their back.
Exactly.
You're saying his was
A shoulder.
Up
His
here in the weights.
yes,
shoulder.
it's more up towards the shoulder
Shoulder.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so, all right, so then you know what? I'm getting this conclusion based off of what you're saying. So would you say he's like one of the founding fathers of neck moves? Or a great creator in neck moves?
I can't say that because that terminology don't exist. You understand? You can't take something that maybe the 90s or ladies call a neck move. There is no such thing as the neck move. It looks like it, but it isn't.
Yeah.
But it isn't. Again, like I used to
So
tell.
for clarification,
Exactly.
we're going to state it as the second version of the back.
This, yes.
So that's, we don't...
And then legs has the third version.
Yes.
Then you have, what's his name, man? He was from Dynamic Breakers. Airborne.
Airborne.
Airborne got the next one.
Yeah.
So you want to know.
A lot of people miss that part.
Exactly.
But, Airborne...
Was nasty.
Yeah, a lot of
When
people
you
don't
say
really get-
continuous backspin
Yeah.
with no hands,
Yeah.
it was airborne. So they go the evolution of backspin as we know it today.
Okay.
And you could tell when you see it, you could see the generation changing from what it was to what became a standard to how it evolved to today's standard.
Yeah,
Because if you don't got no foundation, how can you show an evolution?
that's true.
Now that's the question you should ask anybody. What is the foundation of this? What part do you play in it? If you cannot show an evolution, that means you was here today and gone tomorrow. How can you say that you influence this generation when your own history denies that? I don't have to bring it to you, but I can give you the facts for it. And the reason I can say that is because I was there. Nobody told me this. I literally seen
You
this.
see it with your own eyes.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're gonna jump back and forth to certain things. So I want to jump over to two factors. How did the relationship between you and Speedy introduce itself, and then also the narrative of the crew that you guys were in? What was the length of that, and how did that evolve or come about?
Well, at that time when me and Speedy came together, it was more of the boogie aspect of the dance at that time that brought us together. We went to a place called the Pharaohs, right? And
You went.
who?
You went to Pharaoh's.
Yeah, we went. No, what was that place?
Pharaoh's on Burnside.
On Burnside.
You went, and then I went.
Yeah. And what happened was when I opened up the door, it was Mr. Freeze there doing his shit. But people fail to understand because I find out the history later on. His teacher was a guy named Eric. My old lady who I'm with now, is her son. He taught and bit everything from Eric Hernandez. Everything he did, got it from him. So when I found that out and I brought it to him, I said, yo, who was your teacher? And don't fuck with me because I know the truth now. And they all went to the same high school. You know, they all went to the same high school, right? And bingo, where you get your move from? Oh, you know, I did this. No, tell me the truth. Where you get the move? I just found out who the fuck the guy done it. And that's when he had to fess up. Who was your fucking teacher? It was Eric Hernandez. Mind you, that guy, who he is, his daughter, his sister is my old lady now. And he said it all. He said it all.
But they weren't talking about Freeze. They're talking about me and you.
Yeah, all right. But you got to remember, if it ain't him, he's a part of what Freeze is.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about he's asking you about our relationship, not Freeze's.
What evolution we talking about? Our relationship?
No. All right. So let me say again. There is, you know, some people outside a certain demographic within the context of the history may not understand that you guys share a distinctive history together in a crew that you guys were in.
Mm-hmm. United States Breakers, basically.
Yes.
Talking about us.
And how did you guys?
The one that got us together.
How did you guys interact? Because I remember speaking with Speedy, you know, a while back, you know, the day before the Hall of Fame, and he was telling me, you know, some historical stuff. You know, I knew some of it, but he gave me more context with that. So I don't know why I didn't get a chance to, but you know, I was wondering, there's pictures and all that stuff, and you know what you said, and I always wonder, you know, how did you guys, you know, come about? You know, how did you guys interact and then start, you know, doing things together, you know, in dance?
I want to see if you went. Go ahead, Trac.
As far as the dance?
No.
So mean. You so mean.
Trac.
Hold it up.
How did we meet and how did we hook up as friends?
We met in a place called Pharaoh's.
Okay.
Right? I think near Burnside.
On Burnside.
On Burnside. Right before the Grand Concourse.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I met him.
Okay.
What was I doing?
He was boogieing.
Okay.
He was a boogie.
And what happened after when you saw me boogieing?
When I seen you boogieing,
Yes.
that was the name of the dance at that time.
Electric Boogie.
Electric Boogie. He influenced me more to that. He was my teacher when it came to that.
Oh, okay.
Literally. When it says when Boogie is, he introduced me to that.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. In Pharaoh's. You know, when we broke night, went to the train station, almost got arrested.
So
What year would you say this is?
That was in 80, late 81 going into early 82. So let me explain to you in that perspective, you know, because I always remember certain things like it was yesterday. And for me, it was, I started boogieing in junior high school. Well, I wasn't even a boogie, but it took me about a year to develop the style, you know, being taught and biting other people's style within the neighborhood and friends from school. I finally went to my first club. My sisters, they were considered hustlers. They were part of a crew called the Hustling Crew on Aqueduct Park. And they finally took me to a club up the street, the block. And my sister took me there. She says, "Go ahead and show your stuff. This is where you know people dance, you know." And it was a place called Farrell's. So I went in there with my white little gloves, doing like, you know, when the time came to do my little, you know, golf, you know. I happened to see him like up against the wall, but I didn't know who he was. Until, you know, after that little freestyle session that I did, he came up to me and said, "Yo, I'm Trac too." And I said, "I'm Speedy." And then we started hooking up. And then I kind of knew somewhat of breaking, but I didn't know the breaking community. in a sense, because I was just coming out. I was new. I came from upstate New York. I moved to New York. I started just, again, it's like 12, 13 years old.
So at that time, did you know who Trac
No,
was?
at all. I didn't even know. I know I seen guys breaking on my block as I went to the store, but never knew it, at that time what it was. However, I started, I got into a group in my neighborhood called the 3D Crew.
Yes.
This guy, E.T. and Kenny.
Yes.
And they, we started practicing and so forth and so on. And at that time, when I did go to Pharaoh's, I was already part of a group, beginning a group. We used to dance for African Islam. I didn't know who African Islam was at the time until the whole Soul Sonic Force and all that stuff came. So I was being educated in that aspect coming up. But the moment I met him and he told me about breaking, I remember seeing some breakers and whatever. So he took me under the wing. So we connected, and it's the first person I met in the game that kind of sort of, have knowledge of the scene.
Yeah.
So when he took me under the wing, he's like, I'm going to introduce you to everybody, Spy, this, that, Pee-wee. Pee-wee lived on my block.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things. He introduced me to Pee-wee. We just started collaborating, and we've never been apart for the last, when we first met, we had a good 12-year run after that.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to all the original members of TBB, Rockwell Association. We started going to jams together.
Yeah.
We started to Pool Park.
Yeah.
He just did. And then,
Kind of like basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
he was well known, and I didn't know that in
You started
in the
to realize
Bronx.
who you were hanging with.
Right. So my status of my dance kind of started flourishing from that. That he would take me places, bring me to the Rocksteady basement with Flex, the battle guys. It was always battling here. Taking me, but he took me to 118.
Remember they used to have rubber band and you put an ass whipping on them?
Yeah. That was the down yonder the ropes came
Yes.
when I battled Freeze that day. Finally, after years later.
What? Yes. Yes.
So we kind of connected in a sense where we became brothers. I would sleep in his house. His moms would feed me. We'd go after work, and the whole 83, 82, 84, and all that happened with Beach Street. Just to get to that photograph, after the 3D group, we kind of separated. I started doing shows with, became the boogie boy for Floor Masters before they became the New York City Breakers. And then from there, they became the New York City Breakers. They took me on the audition for Beach Street and all that, which... That's another right before B Street was 84?
Yeah, it's
84? 83, 84?
Yeah,
83 film.
Yeah,
84,
filmed. Right, so it was in 83.
Yeah.
So forth and so on. I mean, I was just practicing so hard. I was getting better in time, over time. And I was dissed from the movie B Street, so therefore I just decided that, I told Trac, this was happening. They replaced me with Mr. Wave, so forth, and he was like, fuck that, we'll make our own group. So I found another brother, old school brother from the original Floor Master, his name is Spirit. And I told Trac, hey, Spirit breaks, he's got dope windmills. Yeah. He said, fuck that, we're going to call ourselves the United States Breakers. I said, you know what? Bigger than New York City Breakers, we'll show them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the guy named Arthur Sanders.
Yeah, so we got a manager, we got an agent, yeah.
Because
Spirit was here today.
Yeah, I was about to say. We were talking to London a few days ago before all of this. I think like Wednesday. He was like, "Yeah, Spirit's gonna be there," and then the whole night. So I was like, "Oh wow." That's
He's original. His windmills was like Chino's.
Wow.
Maybe a little better.
It bugs me out because we used to take the ferry, and because Arthur he was like a.
Did you guys get to see the picture of the United States Breakers?
Yeah.
Yes.
You took pictures?
Yeah, he brought it in with the frame.
I made him bring that in.
Yeah.
Who's in those pictures?
Them.
Us.
Yeah, they're in there.
Trac, me, Spirit.
Yeah.
We took a picture together today.
JoJo?
And let me tell you, JoJo and Prince. This
Okay.
boogie boy named Prince. He had a different style of boogieing. You know what I'm saying?
But it worked for him.
But it worked. He was a crowd pleaser. I was more the battle guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true.
So he'll do stuff like he'll wave his stomach and make it look like he's pregnant and he'll start walking.
He will bring his shit out there.
Like this far out.
Like Salah?
Yeah, just like Salah.
Yo,
He
way
danced
before
like that Salah. You know what I'm saying? That's his style of dancing. Like he was entertaining. I was more the battle kind of I wouldn't even clown around. The shit just be sharp.
True.
The floats would be floating like you really see me
You had
sliding.
more
Like,
aggressive approach.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
much. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in that perspective, and when I don't know if you've seen the little clip of me in Bronx River, the red and white suit. It was that kind of thing. I even thought I was locking. I was like, at that time.
But you know what? I think that footage is also on the
On
freshest-
every document.
On
No,
the
how about
freshest
every-
kids,
yeah.
extra
How about-
footage.
how about
So
that-
you can
that-
see that on freshest kids.
Yeah.
That shit that happened up in Bronx River. You in there?
That's what I'm saying. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Right, right.
Okay.
By that time, I was already golden.
Exactly.
I was already in my prime.
I didn't believe that. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was there.
Because I had a show, like I said, I danced for Africa Islam. Africa Islam was supposed to perform that night. We were on a radio station called WHBI. We were
Yeah, I
interviewed.
remember that in Newark, right?
No, in Manhattan.
Oh, okay.
It was the first hip hop radio
Zulu
station.
Beats. Zulu
Yeah.
Beats, yes.
First radio hip hop station. It came out at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
I was in Poe Park.
Wasn't that Babito though?
No. This is way before
Islam,
Bobby.
Africa Islam.
Yeah, this is like.
And Red
early
Alert
80s.
was his.
83.
Red Alert was his son.
Yep.
Yep, he had him under
Yep.
the wing.
Okay.
Telling you,
All right.
follow me
That
here.
was the first radio
Follow
show
me
ever
in.
in the culture.
Exactly. I was hanging out at Poe Park. I was with Abby, and he had the HBO crew. I said, "Yo, Abby, I'm going on the radio station doing an interview with my crew. You put on the radio, make sure you hear what I'm about to say." Because he said, "Oh, just give us a shout out."
Do you happen to have any tapes of that?
You know what? That's a quick question. That's a good question
Because
somebody,
there is some
somebody-
HBI stuff that on some website.
Yes, somebody
that
sent me.
posted up.
Somebody sent me to the interview.
Really?
I forgot it is on my phone, bro, and I forgot who sent it to me.
Oh wow.
And they
That's
sent
dope.
it. I think it was.
The take that
you know-
take dude. The take dude.
No, I think it was DJ. The one that was DJ near Ruggs.
Rugs. Oh word.
I think DJ Ruggs sent it to me. I gotta look
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
But it talks about the 3D crew and all that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that to say that it was around that moment when we decided to kind of form the group, the United States Breakers, at that time, and they were already on the B Street tour. And while they were on the B Street tour, we were doing other shows, bar mitzvahs and stuff like that. And
Windows
we got
of the
That
World.
was a
When
busy,
the hour,
busy time to be in groups doing
We had,
shows. and
we had
breaking.
Destiny, the graph writer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a couple of people,
Yeah.
you know.
Destiny,
yeah.
he did a graph writer for Audi, and they kept it. And they made a car
Nice.
from that whole shit.
So we're talking like what, 80, late
84, yeah,
84?
right on. All this happened right after B Street.
Arthur
Okay,
Sanders was
right
the
fine.
backbone to us, yeah.
So going back to Gordy, I had a manager. I did the Islam's first video. So how I landed up in Bronx River that night is that they booked us to do a show with Africa Islam. Something happened with Africa, and he had another show to do. He had Red Alert play for him. So if you see, and that time Candy Girl came out. Candy Girl.
Yeah.
They were supposed to perform that night, and they hired us
Oh wow.
to open up for New Edition.
Oh okay.
So the crew members, I don't know what happened with one of the crew members. We did a routine and everything. So I had one new member come up from the 3D crew, and then it was supposed to be me, Chino, and E.T. Something happened in E.T.'s family that he couldn't come to the show. So I said, looked at him and said, "We got to do this, bro." So we went and we did the show, and that's how it. And at that time, the only reason that you guys get to see that footage, and this is the first time I'm saying this, it's because that footage came from Michael Holman. And when Michael Holman was in Bronx River filming that, he was with Chino. And I seen Chino, and I said, "Chino, what are you doing here?" He says, "I'm here with Michael Holman. We're looking for B-boys to start a new group." What group? I wasn't aware. I didn't know until after the fact. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So I said, "All right, I got to do the show. I have 5 minutes to get on stage." I never asked him what group because, I'm thinking he's going to elevate
So it became New York City Breakers.
that they became the New York City Breakers. From
So
that night.
was FaZe in that? It was FaZe in.
I didn't see FaZe there.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I just knew he was there, 2 camera guys, and that's all that Bronx River footage is from Michael Holman.
Okay.
If it wasn't for Michael Holman to be there and them going there to look for B-boys for the group, nobody will ever see that footage. I wouldn't even exist on that footage,
Oh wow. Okay.
technically.
All right.
So you could say like the blessing in disguise.
Period. Because that's, I got photographs of me, back when, my first show in the club, and there was cameras in there. We were performing in it was in 14th Street. It was a club, underground club. We did a performance there, and Wiggles and Fable and Freeze. Freeze wasn't there. Fable was there. So we had a battle and showcase from the 3D crew with Magnetic and Force. Now that I know, I always thought they were Rocksteady. Yeah.
Magnus,
Well, Kenny had to remind me about that, you know, and I always thought they were Rocksteady.
Yeah. This before.
Yeah. So we've always had a battling concept with them because we battled them in this place called Holy Spirit on University, and it was always a showcase battle. But my boogie elevated so much that I started getting such a reputation that people wanted to see me and Freeze battle. You know what I'm saying?
Because you already had the aggressive aesthetic, you know, and then you were also b-boying, so that carried over to.
I wasn't b-boying, I was boogieing.
So
I learned the breaking little by little with him as we started doing the United States Breakers. Okay. We would practice behind his cousin's house on Valentine Avenue, and he would
my brother's house, yeah.
So, his brother's house, and I would just practice little things. But then I would go home and practice little backspins and stuff. But, you know, I had foundation stuff that I really didn't throw out there. And it was kind of getting late in the game, like 85, 86, and it kind of like was wearing out anyways. And, you know, I didn't become a full-fledged breaker until 91.
Okay. So would you say that you two are actually each other's teachers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, two questions for you, Trac.
Pluto, I'm sorry. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
That footage at the Bronx River, you remember when they had like the kid, he was on the floor and he was acting like he was like itching? Like he was scratching himself?
Yeah.
It's in a Planet Rock video, and then he started going to footwork?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who that person was?
No.
Okay. You know what I'm talking about, Pluto?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't even know who that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I know.
I have no
I was
idea.
just always intrigued because he had like mad character. Yeah, like he was like he was ticking, like he was itching, and then he just broke out to like start doing crazy footwork.
And it's a short clip.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so short.
Okay, so I have this. I might have this picture of both you, but I know emphatically that you're there. You know, you Trac. It's a black and white photo, and I think it was in Boston when you guys were on a stage.
Yeah.
Elevated
Commonwealth.
I have it here.
Lawrence, Massachusetts.
Were you there?
No, I was supposed to be there.
He was supposed to be there.
Yeah. So
and Cootie came out.
So that's
Cootie came out in my place.
That happened
Kuriaki.
when we went there. It was when Diana Ross did the Central Park, and it rained out.
Yeah, I remember.
We
that.
left. Cootie just came back from Hawaii, and we found out, and we grabbed, we took him, and he came with us.
So
That's
you
Lawrence,
guys,
Massachusetts.
You drove up to Boston.
Yeah,
For that.
a guy named Charlie came to pick it up in our van. But he was a DJ.
And mind you, I practiced the whole time,
And that shit
they
came
dubbed
out.
me.
That shit came out in their newspaper the following day.
So those pictures are from the newspaper.
Yeah, I got one of the pictures now. He sent.
Yeah, I got them. Yeah,
That's Commonwealth Park.
Okay.
And you can see JoJo there. You can see his brother Mike there.
Yep.
Cootie was there.
Yeah, and you guys are on stage. You know,
Exactly.
I've got one. I did a close up of one of the pictures of you. You're doing tops, and then another one, of him. You
on the
doing
floor.
Footwork. Yeah.
On the
doing
floor.
Footwork. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would have been the boogie boy for the whole showcase.
Most definitely.
I'm still debating on with that because I'm a little disappointed to know that what happens after 20 years later, why it was being played like that. Because how does the Goody come out of nowhere? We've been practicing for that show for like 2 weeks, and Goody comes out of it. So you just replaced a boogie boy for a breaker, which didn't make no sense because most groups have breakers. They always need a boogie boy.
Yeah. That
Let me
was
tell
at
you,
the time.
in Lawrence, Massachusetts, you know what song? When we got to Massachusetts that we started hearing?
What's that?
Damn, what's the name of that fucking record, man? It just went right out.
Was
It
it
was
Electro record?
Run DMC. It's like you. It's like that.
It's like that. Yeah.
That's what the
That's
record
from
was
the
on.
Run DMC record.
That's
Yeah.
when the record.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, because that was everywhere.
Let me tell you,
everywhere.
and our
Just
name
like
came out.
Roxanne.
Yeah.
That name came.
That was like 2 years later.
Yeah, Roxanne
But that
was
whole
just
thing,
as big as that
whole
song.
thing,
Yeah.
That Central Park. I would always remember that.
So you guys were there at the Diana Ross Central Park?
No, we left that same day when that happened.
Oh, you guys left that same day.
Exactly. My man Charlie came down with a van.
So it was raining.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why I will always remember because of that fucking concert in Central Park. That I know we left that day. My man Charlie came down, put us in a van, and we shot up. My brother was already living there because his old lady was out there in Norris, Mass.
All right, so.
So when Lino heard it, he was like, "It was y'all." He's from the opposite side of it.
Yeah.
That was y'all. I said, "Yeah."
So he saw y'all as a kid back in the day.
Yeah.
So
he basically he read the same in Mass. That fucking that article also came out where he was at.
Oh, okay.
Because it is Mass.
It made its rounds.
Exactly.
Okay.
It was y'all. It was your niggas. He said, yeah.
Yeah.
So that magazine, that print that came out of the newspaper reached him, Lino.
Yeah.
And he never knew it was us. I said, that was us, motherfucker. That was y'all.
And 2 years later, you guys,
yes,
confirming it.
Just like the clip from Bronx River. It's like 20, 30 years later, nobody knew it was me, but it's in every documentary.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not till now everybody's starting to give me the acknowledgement.
Yeah. Is that you? That was you?
I have it on my phone.
It's funny how sometimes your flowers and your acknowledgement comes later.
Yeah.
Something I have to mention. I was when it was at the Breaking Hall of Fame. And we talked about it the night before and the variables and the whole nine.
Oh yeah.
About having Trac come through and all that stuff, and then I forget who I was talking to somebody and out of nowhere they said we have an award for Trac. So out of nowhere they came with that, which I thought was dope to acknowledge him. And give you your flowers and all that stuff.
Who gave him the flowers?
He got an award that night.
No,
he didn't.
He didn't
No.
award?
No. You know what they told me?
No, they didn't.
No. Okay, let me explain. So what happened was, I brought Trac
Next
in.
one.
Wait.
No, we were talking about it the night before.
And we sat there just so they can see him. And the thing with that was, what I was told, there was a discrepancy based on an interview he did, that he made some comments about slurping, so they were kind of blackballing him from the presenting him with the award. Once I brought him there and people started approaching them and saying, "Yo, you're telling me that Forrest Gump gets an award before Trac too?" And nobody sat comfortable with that. So they came up to us and said, "Yo, we're going to give you an award next year," which is this year, 2025. So I was like, now I had to bring him here so he can show face, so you people can, because if you have an award show, there shouldn't be any bias. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Personal opinions, any of that, based on anything.
You know who backed me up? Coke LaRock. You know why? Because when I met Coke LaRock in the Katona Park Jam, I told him, are you a legacy of the Hevalo? He goes, yeah. I said, did you know that's my uncle's club? So that makes you my uncle's because of the connection of the history of where Hevalo was. That's when you started doing your merry-go-round in the Hevalo. So when I went to Coke LaRock, I said, do you know you my uncle? You are part of my uncle's club. You are the legacy of my uncle's club. And that day, the twins was there because the Speedy, who brought me there, it was like, yo, which members here are from the Hevalo? Me, twin, everybody. Me, twin. All of y'all are an extension of my uncle's club. That makes you my family. It was like, oh fucking yeah, that's true.
It's part of the lineage.
And that's when they said, Trac, man, we love you. We know what you have been done. Next year is your year. Next time is your year.
Here's the thing. Sometimes people as we all know in this history, we all, through history, and we try to do to the best of our ability.
Exactly.
Sometimes the context, people don't understand. Sometimes the stuff that we're conveying may not grasp people.
Exactly.
Sometimes it takes years for them to catch on. And then they realize, oh wow, he was saying this years ago, and then it's like, now we see that. There's certain things that you said that I personally, seen, and like, there's some receipts that, the stuff that you said, in the past that, that I may have not have seen, or the culture may have not have seen. So, but that's the beauty of all of this, because we since we have technology, we can address those things,
exactly.
At a time and put that in perspective. But the thing about it is the audience has to understand that what we are saying and what we are doing is an upgrade of what was going on, because we look and we find consistency with stuff that we may not have seen before, because I have this philosophy: everything is access to information.
Exactly.
If you have access to certain information, your perspective is going to be different.
Exactly.
You could be speaking, the only person in the room speaking, and no one may not see what you say, but some years down the line, if you're continuing to do the research, they will see it. So yes,
but,
definitely.
Because
when you were over by the twins, he was standing like right here. I was standing right here, and Ness was standing right next to me, and Ness was like turned away, and I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, yo, I thought I would never see that, and then Ness is like, yo, what do you mean? And so I tap on him, I'm like, yo, look, and then one of the rare times I ever seen Ness lost for words, bro. But that was dope to see that, because I've had conversations with you, the cohesion that we need for all of you OGs. You may not totally agree with everything, but you guys are still those dudes that are responsible for this stuff. So there has to be at least a cohesion of context that, we'll figure it out. But first, we really need to show that this is where it's from, because there's dudes outside of New York City telling New York people what New York history is, and I'm like,
that's why Ness,
you guys look crazy.
The best, and this is Ness, my son. He's always said it, and he said it to everybody from a Cool Herc party. He said it in front of them. Track 2 is the voice of the fucking voiceless. You need to listen to it. So when I went there and I said, you a Hebelo alumni? You a Hebelo alumni? You a Hebelo? The twins, are you a Hebelo? Yeah. Then you a legacy of my uncle's club. That makes you my family. You got that right.
And that's context. And that's
now next year,
that was not
it's you.
Historically there.
But that's what I'm saying.
And sometimes we have to look within ourselves to put the pieces in the puzzle of pieces that may not have been there, and then when we put them together, oh, look what we have here. Oh wow, this looks a little different. We have better context. We have more of an accurate narrative. So we have to be open to those things. If we're not open to those things, we can, it's like Bruce Lee is like, don't look at the finger or you'll miss all the heavenly glory.
That's a fact.
So just to clarify.
Yes, sir.
So when Dancing Doug called your name, that was him showing respect to you, of like letting you know about. Okay.
So
because I knew that I heard your name called.
Yeah.
And I thought you was getting an award, so that's what I was.
No, so what happened was on that.
And I told him, I'm like, yo, it's dope. They get.
No, so what happened was that made it seem. Now that I'm remembering that night as we speak.
Yeah.
They gave him a shout out.
Thank you.
He got up and went to the stage to give thanks.
Yes.
And then I was like,
I thought he was receiving an award.
And somehow, some way, he misunderstood the thing. And I was like, no, Trac, they just gave you a shout out. He's like, oh. And then I had to bring him back to the seat.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because, I know, like I said.
And then Quick Step and a bunch of other people started coming up to us. Like, yo, you ain't getting an award today? And they were like, oh, no, that's not going to happen. And then they went, took a walk. 3 minutes later, came back and said, oh, Glide. Yeah. You got your Trac. Next year, you're getting an award.
Yeah.
But to sit there and have to see certain people get an award, like Forrest Gump getting an award before Track 2, how's that happen? Who was born first? And when you talk about giving awards to people in first generation and so forth, all right, so let's just talk about the generations then. Let's acknowledge people per generation. it's like you're on in first generation, but then you got third generations, second generations. How does that go? How does that work? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
it's confusing.
It is, and that's the thing. Like, you're first generation. As I don't think a lot of people like you understand it. Y'all big. Y'all are massive.
But they're trying to say they're before Trac.
You know what bugs me out?
So that makes Trac second generation?
No.
That makes New York City Breakers third generation? Does that make me a fourth generation? I don't know. I'm confused.
It's like Dancing Doug.
Okay.
For a fact. Dancing Doug is not a Bronx guy. He's from the Polo Grounds. That's a fact.
And it's something like
that
this.
Is a fact.
He would put
You're not a Bronx guy, homeboy. You lived in the Polo Grounds.
And
you
this is something that he will say
what
right
makes
now.
You a Bronx
see
guy?
the interview and then abandon him from the event.
Oh, okay. To clarify, where is exactly the Polo Grounds?
The Polo Grounds is right across from Yankee Stadium.
Okay.
The Polo Grounds used to be the Polo Grounds, and now it went from that aspect being moved out.
Now, would that be considered like
the height?
They gentrified it.
So is that like what I guess it's like Manhattan, then it's the Bronx.
Yeah, you can see the Polo Grounds right across.
Okay.
You can see it.
Okay.
You get to where Cool Herc is at. Go down. Mm-hmm. Polo Grounds are right there.
Okay.
That was literally a polo ground. Period.
Doug said he was from Harlem.
What?
That's what Dancing Doug said.
He's from where?
He said he's from Harlem.
That's what he said?
Yeah.
He didn't. You see, that's the whole point.
He told me he was from Harlem.
You see, that's what bugs me out.
I'm being honest.
That's what That's what bugs me out. He says one thing, but the bottom line, like I said, he was not from the Bronx.
Okay.
So if he states that, then that's a fact. That's true. He's never from the Bronx.
Okay.
But at one time, he said he was. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, has he ever do we know if he ever moved from Harlem or the Polo Grounds to the Bronx?
No, not that I know of.
And
I know everybody knows him from the Polo Ground.
Okay.
That's what I know.
Okay.
That he made, by the time what we call, was the beginning of the evolution of what became hip-hop. Okay. Because hip-hop is not hip-hop until 1982. Let's get that right.
Okay. That's your opinion on it.
That's a fact.
That's your opinion on it.
That's a fact.
Okay.
But you know what? I'll just say this.
That's a fact. And it was Bam who coined it.
There was a lot of people that say that both your perspectives. You know what I mean? So it's just like when people ask me, well, is graffiti part of hip hop? And I was like, well,
it depends on you.
It depends on it depends on when you personally came into the culture. Mm-hmm. If you came into the culture in say the early '80s and on, you will probably say that graffiti is a part of hip hop culture. Yeah. But if you came in the early '70s, you may not say that you don't see the connection, because there were writers, there were black and Latino and all that. They were listening to Thin Lizzy and fucking Zeppelin and all of that stuff. And they didn't, and then in funk, but they didn't even mess with hip hop and all that stuff or whatever. They have a different perspective. Yeah. So it's all in context of where when you came into the culture.
Yeah, I understand that. But you can't use the word hip-hop because it does not exist. That word did not exist.
You know what? That's factual. That's factual.
You see? So when you say a timeline, you got to understand the evolution to when it became and be called hip-hop. And that whole aspect comes from Bam.
You know what? A lot of people...
It's
kind of like, the different opinions and all that stuff. Yeah. To me, I don't think that hip-hop started in 1973. I do the research.
I know that fact. Is it?
I know when I came. I got it.
Never existed.
It's not 50 years. It's not 50 years.
Thank you.
It's not 50 years. Hip-hop started in 77. If you're going to give a date, what we define hip-hop, all the variables of all, you could talk to Shao Rock, she even says it.
You know what? I could agree with that.
Because there's all four elements were executed in 77.
Maybe early 76. I
crunched the numbers. I've been crunching the numbers for that 10 years.
Agree to that. That makes sense. Historical
so with all that
timeline,
50th stuff, I did not support it. I did not condone it. I will not wear
when
it.
They say,
I've had this fallout with a few people.
Yeah,
there's a few OGs I've had a falling out with that and the whole nine. And I'm like, I stick to my guns. You know, it's like I've got the receipts and I can prove it. Mm-hmm. Everything that I say, I can back up.
So when they say 50 years, what does that put at? What year does it put it in the beginning? I'm not sure. I'm trying to ask you guys.
They try to put it around like 73.
Okay, so that would make it 50 years from now.
50 years.
Oh, okay, 73.
2 years. Yeah. Now, here's something. Kool Herc's history is 50 years. Because he did that jam in 73.
It was actually 74. That's in the flyer.
Okay, so then that's the specific time for Kool Herc's time frame. You know what I mean? We can get.
But it wasn't a jam. It was a party.
But it's not like
celebrating his sister.
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
that's different.
Was there any
the narrative is different now. We changed it.
Yeah, was there
that right there? It changed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you can't say hip hop there either.
So sometimes
because that narrative just erased that.
People take it personal.
Automatically.
I've had a few people, a lot. Some OGs that say, whatever. I'm like, I'm not here to be liked, and I'm not here to tell a bunch of felicitations. I speak facts, and I'll go up against anybody on the planet Earth.
This is called breaking bread. We're breaking bread.
So that's how I look at this, because it's about presenting it factual. If it can't be presented factual, then we fall back into certain things that a lot of people have gotten allowed to get away with, saying stuff that's not factual.
Exactly. So, to piggyback, correct. I do agree with you, what you said about the graffiti, and depending on when you came in to where you consider, I do agree with you 100%. You was about to say something because you did disagree with Trac. So what year were you thinking of? Because you never really said it.
When I came into the game in '81, I knew it as hip hop.
Okay. I heard Bam said in the Village Voice, he said it was 81.
Well, when I did that solo in Bronx River, it was hip hop.
Okay. Now, I'm like Pluto. I believe 77, and my foundation would be looking at the blackout, because during the blackout, the whole game changed. Multiple DJs, a lot of MCs,
but it wasn't labeled yet.
But even the blackout, even the blackout really doesn't felicitate the definition of what I'm saying. Okay, we're talking about the last element, which was rap. The last element was introduced late 76, 77, and in the summer in the park jams. Before that, it was non-existent. All the other elements were going on. Yes. So if we consider, by definition, 4 elements is what we call hip-hop. Yes. If you are not executing 4 elements, you cannot call it hip-hop.
Thank you. Yes, I can agree with that. So the reason why the reason why I pinpoint the blackout is due to the massive growth. And so with that and how certain things spawned, that's the reason why we all say 77, we can agree to that. I just try to pinpoint that blackout because I believe that it changed a lot. And you was around, you saw.
Naturally,
this guy
I got pictures of an abandoned building.
Yeah, like this guy wasn't. And it says, all of a sudden now he says
the year.
Turntables.
I have a question for you, Trac, and you're the first 70s b-boy I can ask this question. So, before that, like let's say 75 and 76, the whole concept of the doubles, taking 2 of the same record. Before that happened, there was a time where that happened, and b-boys danced differently.
Exactly.
The transition when you introduce the doubles of 2 records, that created the aspect of franticness of the style of dance, whether it was sporadic Zulu King or Latino style.
Facts.
So, with that entailed, would you say that 77 was the year that really transcended the style of breaking?
I think it solidified that at that time.
Yes.
It solidified it. Yeah. Because everything, that blackout changed everything. It gave Charlie Chase and these people, fucking, when they were breaking into the crazy, all these fucking places, and then now they got new systems,
And that affected.
But let me tell you right now. I'm gonna tell you right now. We were the first ones, us, when we had a bandit building clubhouse. We were the first one to take extension cords into the light posts. We did that. We were doing that. So if they started doing that later on, we done it. And I know we done it before that. I know we done that before that. Because that's how we would hang out. And my clubhouse is right there, Bronx Park South, by the Bronx Zoo. Southern Boulevard, 129, 118, Mapes Pool, all of that. Where do you think Theodore comes from? From there. Where do you think the Mercedes come from? From there. From that area. All the big the battles happen with Lele and them in 129 on Mapes. I don't care where you come from. Where do they come from? They come from that area. And that cannot be disputed. You can't dispute it. Those are facts.
Okay.
These are facts.
All right. So there's another thing that I mentioned, and I brought up in the interview with New York City Breakers that I quoted, and I learned this from you. The whole concept of the pause tapes.
Yes.
Comes from B-boys.
Yes. Yes. We used to go to Sears. And back then, Sears had where you could get your music from. But then Sears also had like a paint area. So at that time, we would rack up cassettes. And back then, the cassettes were white.
And they were in like a 5-pack or a 3-pack or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could get them like that.
Yeah.
But when they started doing that, when they wanted to sell it out.
Yeah.
But back then, it was just singles. You would get it. So we would get that, right? We would take 1 or 2 of those, right? And then we would go back to our abandoned building clubhouse. Now, certain people had certain records, right? So what we would do is we would put the pause button and we would grab like the break beats of it. Boom. And then we would extend that. Boom. And then we would extend that. Boom. Then we would extend that. Boom. Now, when you look at old pictures, you're always going to see a Puerto Rican with a fucking box. We created the first pause button mixtape. So what we would do, now we don't have to wait right now for a jam. Now we go to your block. Now we're going to battle in the hallway. Or we're going to put that shit out in the street.
And you play it on the box.
Exactly. Yeah. We did that. 1976. You can't. Those are facts. When I told that to Tony was like, holy shit. And then later on you had Tape Master. But he already Tape Master had what they was doing in the PAL. Copying, those little concerts or those, events. Yeah. Right? And they were doing it on white cassette tapes. Meanwhile, we were doing our breakbeat tapes.
You happen to have any of those tapes?
What happened?
You happen to have any of those tapes?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Through all these years?
Yeah. I mean, if you did, you're sitting on a gold brick.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it was spray paint, because we were graffiti writers. It was spray paint and tapes. And so we would just pause the button, extend it, pause the button, and extend it. Now we got our own. We created the pause button mixtape that allowed B-boys to carry their box and battle anywhere. We don't need a DJ now.
Yeah, a lot of people think that,
and when they say something, 1976.
A lot of people think that, people say, well, without a DJ, you don't have breaking. What are they gonna break to? And I'm like, okay, so then then I bring up the box, and then I also bring up inspired by another story that you tell about when you guys battled with JoJo, when you guys went up to their building, tell them to come down.
Yeah.
You guys battled with no music.
Yeah.
B-boys have been battling without beats. Without music since then.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't understand that factor. So
I'm sorry, I just want to ask something. My first battle was in a handball court with no music.
Huh?
Yeah.
There's no music. There's me and this dude going at it.
Yeah. Battles, all throughout the 90s and the 2000s, if you didn't like something, you call the judge out and then, you take it outside because, you got to close down the venue. So this brings me up to another one of my conclusions of, in breaking, you have, you have this thing where I had this conversation with Rob Swift from the Executioners, the DJ, the turntables dude. So we were talking about a whole bunch of things or whatnot. So I said, I broke something down to him because I was breaking down, all the receipts of how much b-boy contributed, particularly 70s b-boys contribute to what we see today, outside of breaking.
Exactly.
And that's why I always say, there's nothing more definitive than breaking. So I said, I was like, there's nothing more definitive than breaking. And I know like a lot of people say, well, it's the DJ and all. I was like, that's interesting. So I was like, let me pose this to you. So I asked him, I said, so the backbone of hip hop is the DJ. He was like, right. And I was like, what's the backbone of the DJ? He's like, what? It's like breaking. See that? It's like breaking inspired hip-hop style DJs. You take breaking out of hip-hop style DJs, you do not have hip-hop style DJs. Because it was a b-boy also that gave Kool Herc another copy of Apache to extend the break. Now the merry-go-round gets construed. The merry-go-round is not the same thing as the doubles extension of the break. Those are two different things. Because that German documentary where Kool Herc shows you how he does the merry-go-round, he's taking bongo rock and I think Apache or something like that.
But
when you
that's surf music.
Yeah, that's
the original story. People are surfers from California. Yeah. That song, Apache and all that comes from the white people.
Yeah.
In California.
I heard it was Canada.
We've always taken influences from all over the things to make ours. We're hip hop culture. We can take anything, and make it hip hop culture. Everything that we do can be re-emulated by the way we present it.
Exactly.
By the way we do it, and that aesthetic is emphatically b-boy. If you're a sneakerhead, take two things: street ballers and b-boys. Yeah. Your sneaker fetish comes from those two things. Yeah. If you want to look fresh, dope outfits and all that, you can think b-boys. Jewelry, the original nameplates, like the Trac nameplate, think b-boys. So what I'm conveying to a lot of people is like, rap culture really owes breaking so much influence because you take, I've said this and I'll say it 1,000 times. I've said, a guy like Batch or Trac 2 or Little Lep is more hip hop than Rakim. Come
Facts.
for me.
I could agree with that 100%.
And I got a lot to unload. I've had conversations with a lot of like poignant, well-known MCs, and I said, we need to stop listening to rappers because they don't really know shit about hip hop culture. And I can back that up.
Exactly.
Come for me.
Exactly.
I would restate what you said, only because I know what you mean, but not many people are going to grasp that. But the fact that rappers owe respect and homage to the breakers.
No, I meant what I said.
Okay.
And I've said it before.
No problem, bro.
And I don't care who's in the house, if they want to have a debate,
Well, think about it for what it's worth. Curtis Blow.
Yeah.
These are the breaks. You would not do a show without breakers.
Yes, there are MCs because you've done a billion and one shows with him. There are some MCs who acknowledge that and do all of that stuff. But I just have
I say that because the shows that he does without breakers isn't the same when he does the shows with the breakers.
But what I'm saying, my point is like, I don't know. Say it's a tick on my shoulder or whatever. When I have this problem of when you say, "Oh, this is hip hop," and you do not mention the most definitive element in the culture is breaking. You cannot call, there's a lot of people on Facebook, oh yeah, I have a hip hop page and all that. Like, where's your hip hop? That's just rappers. That ain't enough. And no disrespect to them, but we're talking hip hop. So if we're going to talk about the concept of the context of something and all that, be precise. If you can't be precise, then you're not really precise.
Exactly.
So I think this whole breaking thing, we need to put this in a higher regard, in a context or whatever, whatnot, and we're not going to ask them. We're going to do it.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Think about that. The backbone of hip hop is the DJ, but what is their backbone? And when I said that, Rob was like, he didn't say, yo, you're bugging or no. He was like, yo, that, he saw it. That's true. That particular style. I'm not saying all DJing style. I'm saying the particular style of what we in this culture acknowledge is a hip hop DJ comes from influencing of b-boys. Whether it be, we're not gonna even talk about time frames, but we'll say Kool Herc, we'll say Lele, we'll say Chase, we'll say Theodore, we'll say Gene, we'll say all of those dudes. Because they were Mario, they were all had b-boys at their jams to dance at those jams, and that's what they knew. If we want to bring the crowd, we're going to bring the crowd pleasers, we're going to bring the entertainment. And what was that? It was the b-boys.
Exactly.
And the Smokatrons.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, but there's a lot of MCs from back when that are b-boys.
Yes.
Pharrell. You can also say Ice-T.
Yeah.
Who else can we say?
Melly Mel.
Melly Mel. You know what I'm saying?
Nas.
Not all Black Eyed Peas, but the majority of the crew. Because was it Fergie? She wasn't, but the Black Eyed Peas and all the males were dancers.
And there's a lot of breakers that came and became DJs.
Nas said he was inspired by Beach Street, and his name was Kid Fresh.
Oh,
Nas from Queensbridge.
Yeah.
I'll say this about Nas. Nas is one of those guys who gives respect to your generation and where it came from and all this stuff or whatever. And he's not even from the Bronx, but he ain't gonna say, "Oh no, man, it didn't start in the Bronx. It started in Queens." He knows and he exemplifies that. So he's one of the rare dudes that I can respect. When he speaks on this stuff. It's a lot of not the best rappers. A lot of them sounded generic when they open their mouths and when they try to speak history, because a lot of them don't know the history.
Right.
I was in an interesting conversation with a well-known rapper's business partner, and I spoke to him for 2 hours why when he speaks history, his history sucks. And he did not once for that 2 hours say, "You're absolutely wrong." He said,